Kalen Dre rubbed at the bar's counter for what must have been the 1000th time that day, his arm moving on instinct, the cloth squeaking faintly against polished metal. The Stellar Drift Tavern's lighting was intentionally dim, flattering to alien visitors but less forgiving to a tired human with a uniform that had lost its sharpness months ago. His vest's edges were fraying, the silver trim dulled, and even his patience, once his strongest asset, felt as though it had worn as thin as the bar top beneath his rag. "Another round, human," barked a hulking Dravenian across the counter, his 4 thick fingers slapping down so hard the bar vibrated. The man's voice had a gravelly echo, almost mechanical, and the threat beneath it was clear. "Coming right up, sir," Kalen said smoothly, forcing the smile he had practiced over months of serving at the Drift. He could make the corners of his mouth rise even when his stomach sank. As he poured the Dravenian's drink, some molten silver concoction that smelled like scorched tires, Kalen glimpsed his reflection in the chrome panel behind the bar. Tousled blonde hair too long, warm gray eyes with shadows under them, a handsome face that looked more exhausted than charming. He let out a breath and pushed the glass toward the impatient customer. "You look like a collapsed star, mate," came the dry voice of Rilo Venn, the kitchen cook, as he leaned through the serving hatch. The Arcturan's skin shimmered faintly with a blue tint, sweat gleaming on his forehead from the heat of the fryers. "Thanks for the uplifting feedback," Kalen muttered. "Why stay here if you're that miserable?" Rilo pressed. "Humans are supposed to be wanderers. Adventurous. Not stuck wiping up spills." "Need the credits," Kalen said, shrugging. "And where would I even go? A waiter's wage won't buy me off-world passage." Rilo grunted, retreating back into the kitchen. The conversation died, but Kalen's thoughts spun. 6 months ago, he'd left behind Earth's gray skies and endless dead-end jobs, thrilled to be accepted into the Interstellar Service Corps. Now here he was, reduced to fetching drinks for aliens who considered his kind a novelty at best, servants at worst. The galaxy's promise of adventure had soured fast. The tavern doors swung open with their usual metallic groan. Kalen barely looked up, until the room's volume dipped noticeably. Patrons slowed in mid-conversation, heads turning toward the entrance. 3 small figures stepped nervously into the dim glow. Children. They were Vidian girls, perhaps 8 or 9 in Earth years, each dressed neatly in shimmering skirts that looked slightly too fine for a tavern like this. Their blue skin seemed to glow softly against the shadows, a hue unlike anything Kalen had seen on humans, reflecting the neon wall lamps like water catching moonlight. Short, silvery white hair framed delicate faces, and each of their enormous eyes shone an almost luminescent shade of turquoise. The tallest approached the bar, balancing on tiptoe to peer at him. "Excuse me, sir," she said, her voice melodic but small. "May we please have something to eat?" Kalen leaned forward, taken aback by the courage it must have taken for them to enter this place. "Where are your parents?" "Mother is coming soon," the girl answered earnestly. But Elira and Sora were very hungry. She gestured to her sisters, who nodded gravely, clutching little pouches that clinked faintly. "We have money," she added, pulling out a handful of coins and setting them on the counter. The pitiful scatter of Vidian pennies wasn't enough for a sip of water, much less food. Around them, a Dravenian trader snorted, his lip curling in contempt. At another table, a pair of Merlonian merchants snickered, clearly waiting for Kalen to wave the girls away. That was what they expected, a human keeping order, showing no softness. Instead, Kalen felt a spark inside him, something he hadn't felt in far too long. "How about some tentacle twists," he suggested, naming a local favorite, fried sea squirm tentacles drizzled in sweet nectar. "On the house." The smallest girl gasped. "Really?" she whispered, her blue cheeks glowing brighter. "Really," Kalen confirmed. "Go find yourselves a table." He turned toward the kitchen. Rilo raised one ridged brow when Kalen gave the order. "You know doc'll dock your pay for that," the cook warned. "Worth it," Kalen replied simply, watching the girls scramble to a corner table by the window, their legs dangling far above the floor. When he returned with the plate of steaming food, the way their faces lit up hit him harder than he expected. They thanked him in soft, overlapping voices, tiny blue hands carefully lifting the golden fried morsels as though they were priceless treasures. "You're very welcome, ladies," Kalen said, his smile this time unforced. He was halfway back to the bar when the tavern doors swung wide again. Silence rippled through the room. A Vidian woman stood framed in the doorway. Her blue skin shimmered like crystal under the tavern lights, seeming almost to radiate its own glow. Silver-white hair fell in an elegant cut around a face so perfectly proportioned it looked sculpted. She wore a gray gown trimmed with furs and gemstones that glittered with each movement, and her presence alone drew every gaze. "Mother!" cried the eldest girl, leaping to her feet and waving. The woman crossed the room with unhurried grace, as if she owned not just this space but the air itself. Up close, Kalen caught the scent of her perfume, alien flowers with a faint spice undercurrent. "Elira, I told you to wait outside," she said firmly, though without harshness. "We were hungry," the girl confessed. "And this kind human gave us food." The woman's piercing eyes, blue like frozen starlight, swung toward Kalen, holding him as firmly as a tractor beam. Did he now? Kalen felt warmth rise in his face. "It was nothing, ma'am. They were hungry." "Nothing?" Her elegant brow arched. "Kindness is never nothing, human. Especially not here." She extended her hand. "I am Serenia Kairos." "Kalen Dre," he said, taking her hand. Her skin was surprisingly warm, her grip both delicate and firm. "You have my gratitude," Serenia said, testing his name on her lips. "How much do I owe you for their food?" "Nothing," Kalen repeated. "It was my pleasure." Something flickered across her expression, interest, curiosity, perhaps even amusement. She reached into her jeweled pouch and withdrew a crystalline card, pressing it into his palm. "I find myself in need of additional staff at my estate. Someone with your disposition might be valuable." Kalen stared down at the card, its etched letters gleaming faintly. Astral Heights. The name alone made Rilo whistle low from the kitchen doorway. The most exclusive estate in the Northern Hemisphere. "Think about it," Serenia said, gathering her daughters with a graceful sweep. "The position would be far more rewarding than this." She began to glide away, the children trailing close. At the door, she glanced back once more, her gaze locking with his. "Thank you again for your kindness to my daughters. Such things are never forgotten in my household." Then she was gone, leaving only the faint trail of her perfume and the weight of the crystalline card in his hand. For the first time since arriving on Vidia Prime, Kalen Dre felt something stirring other than resignation. He felt hope. The crystalline card weighed in Kalen Dre's pocket like a hot coal for days. He turned it over in his hands whenever he was alone, running his thumb along its etched lines as though the elegant script might whisper some hidden message if he pressed just right. Sleep didn't come easily in his cramped apartment above the stellar drift. Every time Kalen shut his eyes, he saw Serenia Kairos's gaze, icy yet radiant, intelligent yet warm. Her voice lingered in his head, low and melodic, wrapping around him like music he couldn't turn off. He caught himself grinning at nothing, then scowling at his own foolishness. She was a noble woman, a luminary. He was a human waiter. It was absurd. And yet, the card burned all the same. By the third night, exhaustion had carved dark hollows under his eyes. Rilo then noticed immediately. "You look like you got caught between a plasma torch and a reactor leak," the cook said, flipping sizzling cuts of meat with his usual blunt care. Kalen shrugged, trying to mask his turmoil. "Just long shifts." But Rilo wasn't fooled. He'd known Kalen long enough to see through the lie. Still, he didn't push. Just grunted and said, "Whatever's chewing you up, either spit it out or let it go before it swallows you whole." That evening the stellar drift was loud and rowdy, filled with a delegation of Merlonian traders. They drank heavily, sloshing luminous alcohol across the bar. When one sent a full glass crashing, Dakor Resh, the reptilian owner, docked the cost from Kalen's wages with a sneer. Humans, Dakor hissed. Always making excuses. Always weak. The insult gnawed, but Kalen held his tongue. He had endured worse. Still, when the tavern finally emptied into the night and the last echoes of alien laughter faded, Kalen made his decision. He pulled the crystalline card from his pocket and placed it on the bar. The surface came alive instantly, glowing faint blue as a small holographic interface shimmered to life. His pulse raced as he entered his details. The reply came almost at once. Serenia's image materialized above the card, flickering into being so vivid he could almost smell her exotic perfume. Kalen Dre, she said, her tone carrying an unmistakable warmth. I was beginning to think you had cast aside my offer. He swallowed hard. I've been, considering it carefully. And what conclusion have you reached? Her holographic eyes sparkled. Kalen hesitated, then exhaled. Is the position still available? Her lips curved into a slow smile. It is. Then I'd like to accept. Excellent. Transportation will arrive at first light. Before Kalen could answer, the tavern doors slammed open with a thunderous crash. 3 masked figures stormed in, weapons drawn, sleek energy rifles humming with restrained menace. The nearest patron would have bolted if there had been one, but only Kalen and Rilo remained. Nobody move, the tallest intruder shouted, his voice distorted through a vocoder. Serenia's hologram flickered with concern. Kalen, what's happening? The intruder's head snapped toward her voice, the shimmer of her projection reflected in his mask. Who was that? He demanded sharply. Kalen slapped a hand over the card, cutting off the connection instantly. Transmission ended. The leader stalked forward, weapon raised. You. Human. Where are they? Kalen's heart hammered. Where are who? The Kairos children, the intruder hissed. We know they were here. Cold realization slammed into him. They weren't robbers. They were hunting Serenia's daughters. They left days ago, Rilo interjected from behind the counter, voice trembling. Haven't seen them since. The leader gestured, and the other 2 began ransacking the place, overturning chairs and ripping into storage crates. Kalen's pulse thundered in his ears. Why children? Why target them? His thoughts fractured, until a faint sound rose at his feet. A chime. A delicate, unmistakable sound. The bracelets. Kalen's blood went cold. He looked down, and from beneath the bar's edge, he caught the glimmer of blue skin and a tiny hand reaching for a fallen spoon. The children, Elira, Naira, Sora, were hiding under the counter. Somehow they had slipped in without him noticing, small and silent as shadows. The leader loomed closer, weapon trained directly on Kalen's chest. If you're hiding something, human, I'll burn a hole through your heart. Kalen forced his face blank. I'm not hiding anything. Just a tired waiter who's had a long day. The intruder leaned in, his masked face inches from Kalen's. Humans are terrible liars. Your pulse is jumping in your throat. One of the others called from the kitchen. Nothing back here. Then check upstairs, the leader barked, never breaking his stare from Kalen's eyes. Every nerve in Kalen's body screamed. If they found the children, they'd be taken, or worse. His mind scrambled for options. His hand slid toward a bottle on the counter, sweat slick on the glass. What was that? The leader snapped suddenly, noticing the faintest flicker of motion from beneath the bar. Kalen acted before fear could root him. He swung the bottle up and smashed it across the attacker's mask. Glass and liquid burst, the intruder staggering back as his rifle discharged wildly into the ceiling. Run! Kalen shouted, vaulting the counter, planting himself squarely between the children and the armed invaders. The tavern erupted in chaos. Blaster fire scorched the walls, filling the air with acrid smoke. Kalen's shoulder flared in agony as a beam grazed him, but he pushed through it, adrenaline drowning the pain. Years of breaking up drunken brawls lent his movements a practiced roughness. He lashed out with a kick, knocking one weapon from an attacker's grip and sending it clattering across the floor. Rilo, surprisingly fearless, launched himself at another, grappling the masked alien from behind with surprising strength for a cook. The leader recovered fast, rifle raised for a killing shot. And the tavern doors burst open again. Serenia Kairos swept in, flanked by 2 armored guards, her presence now blazing with authority and fury. Her sapphire gaze ignited like lightning. "Get away from him," she commanded, her voice vibrating with power. The attackers faltered instantly. Recognition and fear registered even through their masks. "This isn't over," the leader snarled, retreating toward the back exit. "The children will be ours." And with a final threatening gesture, they vanished into the night. The silence that followed was deafening. Slowly, 3 small heads peeked out from behind the bar. "Mother!" Alira cried, rushing to Serenia, her sisters close behind. Serenia dropped to her knees, embracing them fiercely. Relief softened her features, but only briefly. Her gaze lifted to Kalen. Blood stained his shoulder where the shot had grazed, but he still stood tall, chest heaving. "You protected them," she said, rising gracefully, her eyes locking with his. "At risk to your own life." Kalen winced, suddenly aware of the pain lancing through him. "I couldn't let them hurt children." Serenia stepped closer, her fury melting into something quieter, deeper. Her fingers touched his wounded shoulder lightly, warmth radiating from her skin. "First, you showed kindness. Now, courage. Both for my daughters." Her touch lingered. "You will come with us now. My physician will tend to you." It wasn't a request. Kalen nodded, breath caught somewhere between pain and awe, as her guard secured the tavern. As he met her gaze, piercing blue and unyielding, Kalen understood one thing with absolute clarity: his life had just shifted again, violently and irrevocably. Astral heights defied anything Kalen Dre had dared to imagine. The private transport glided above a sprawling peninsula that jutted into the Vidian Sea, where twin moons cast pale light across rippling water. The estate itself rose from the land like a dream sculpted in stone and crystal. Soaring towers shaped like seashell spirals, gardens glowing with bioluminescent blossoms, fountains spilling streams of liquid light that looked more like molten stars than water. "This is," Kalen trailed off, the words collapsing before they formed. "My family's home for 7 generations," Serenia Kairos replied quietly, her pride tempered with weariness. She sat across from him, her daughters curled up and fast asleep, their blue skin glimmering faintly beneath the cabin lights. "Though I've made changes to suit my own tastes." The transport descended, touching down on a landing platform rimmed with crystalline pylons that pulsed like heartbeats. Attendants emerged instantly, lifting the sleeping children with practiced gentleness. "Take them to their chambers," Serenia instructed. "Double the guards tonight." As the children were carried away, she turned her attention back to Kalen. Moonlight made her appear almost ethereal, her silver hair gleaming against skin that shimmered with living luminescence. "Now, let's see to that shoulder." She guided him through arched corridors that seemed alive, walls of pale stone pulsing faintly with inner light. Artwork adorned every space, 3-dimensional sculptures that shifted and rearranged when looked at from different angles, as though responding to their presence. Kalen slowed, mesmerized. "It's moving. Vidian art is alive," Serenia explained. "It responds to emotion. Right now, it senses your awe, and your pain." They entered a medical chamber unlike any Kalen had seen. Sleek consoles, glowing instruments, and surfaces that reshaped themselves to fit his body. A male Vidian in formal attire stepped forward, bowing slightly. Mistress Kairos, he intoned. This is the human. Yes, Mirren's soul, Serenia confirmed. He was injured defending my daughters. Something softened in the physician's eyes. Sit here, please. The contoured chair molded to Kalen's frame. Mirren applied a cool gel that numbed instantly, the wound closing almost visibly. Fascinating, the physician murmured. Human tissue responds better to our regenerative compounds than our own. Is that unusual? Kalen asked, watching the skin knit together. Extremely. Most species require tailored formulas. Humans adapt. Mirren's gaze flicked briefly toward Serenia. It makes them uniquely valuable. And dangerous, Serenia added softly, her eyes never leaving Kalen's face. When Mirren finished, Serenia led Kalen to a wide balcony that overlooked the sea. The horizon shimmered silver blue under the twin moons, the air scented with blossoms from the bioluminescent gardens below. A servant discreetly set down 2 glasses of glowing liquid and vanished. You deserve an explanation, Serenia said at last. She sat across from him, her posture regal even in weariness. About the attack. About why I sought you. Kalen's fingers tightened on his glass. I'm listening. She studied him for a long beat, as though weighing the depth of his trust. I am what my people call a luminary, a political leader with direct influence over Vidian governance. My family has held this role for generations. I've dedicated mine to one cause, opening our society to other species, especially humans. And not everyone agrees, Kalen guessed. Her lips curved in a humorless smile. Perceptive. There is a faction here, purists, who cling to the old ways. They believe Vidians must remain genetically sovereign, isolated from outside influence. Humans are their greatest fear. Why humans? Kalen pressed. Serenia's gaze locked with his, luminous and unflinching. Because your kind is the only species genetically compatible with ours. Rare, but possible. Hybrids can exist. Kalen nearly choked on his drink. You mean? Yes, she said simply. The purists call it abomination. They believe it threatens the foundation of our culture. And your daughters? Kalen asked quietly. Why target them? Serenia's voice wavered just enough for him to hear the vulnerability beneath the steel. To hurt me. To stop my legislation that would grant humans equal rights on Vidia Prime. Some believe my late husband carried human ancestry. If true, my daughters would be living proof of everything the purists deny. The pieces clicked painfully into place. The attack hadn't been random. It had been personal. Political. Deadly. Serenia's hand brushed his as she set down her glass. The faint touch sent warmth spiraling through him. When I offered you employment, I did need security. But there was something else as well. Kalen's heart thudded. Something else? She leaned closer, moonlight catching the sharp lines of her cheekbones, softening the edges of her beauty until it was almost unbearable. Most humans I've met act with calculation. You did not. You fed my children without thought of reward. You risked yourself without hesitation. That kind of spontaneous compassion is rare among my people. Kalen swallowed hard. I was just doing what anyone would have done. No, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Not anyone. You. The silence stretched, electric. The faint hum of the estate's walls seemed to echo the pounding of Kalen's heart. He became acutely aware of every detail, her breath, steady but faster now, the warmth radiating from her, the way her luminous eyes darkened as they studied him. I shouldn't, Kalen began, though the words crumbled. Vidians live long lives, Serenia murmured, her finger brushing against his lips. We learn to seize rare opportunities when they appear. Without regret. Her lips touched his, warm, insistent, tasting of exotic spice and starlight. The kiss began as gentle exploration but deepened, urgent, electric. Kalen's breath caught as the world narrowed to her mouth, her scent, her touch. When they parted, he was dazed, trembling. "Are you sure this is wise? Given your position?" "Wisdom," she said with a wry smile, "is overrated. My heart recognized you the moment you showed kindness to my daughters." Her hand slid behind his neck, pulling him into another kiss. That night, the estate itself seemed to breathe with them, walls pulsing faint light in rhythm with their racing hearts. For the first time since leaving Earth, Kalen didn't feel small or lost. He felt seen. Chosen. When dawn broke, soft light filtering through crystal walls, Kalen woke in an unfamiliar bed. The sheets smelled of Serena's perfume, and for a moment he thought he'd dreamed everything. But the formal suit laid out for him and the servant's quiet knock told him otherwise. "Good morning, sir," the attendant said, placing a tray of food. "Mistress Kairos requests that you join her in the East Atrium once you are refreshed. She asks that you attend as her guest." Kalen stared at the finely tailored suit of midnight blue with silver accents. Yesterday he had been a waiter. Today, he was stepping into something entirely different. When he joined Serena, she stood surrounded by holographic news feeds, wearing deep purple robes embroidered with silver thread. Even among shifting lights, her beauty was undeniable. She dismissed the displays when she saw him, her eyes softening. "The attire suits you," she said, adjusting his collar with fingers that lingered longer than necessary. "Today, you won't be my guard. You'll be my honored guest." Kalen's heart raced again, not from fear but from the quiet certainty that whatever path he had stumbled onto, there was no turning back. The capital of Vidia Prime spread beneath the transport like a jewel of glass and light. Towers of coral-like architecture stretched skyward, bridges of transparent crystal arched between them, and suspended gardens hung in midair, glowing faintly with bioluminescence. Kalen Dre sat beside Serena Kairos, his hands gripping his knees as the craft hummed toward the center of power. Yesterday he had been a waiter. Today, he was about to stand before the highest council of one of the galaxy's most advanced civilizations. The council chamber was built 5 millennia ago, Serena said, her voice calm but edged with tension. "It's said to amplify truth and diminish falsehood. Though I've heard my share of lies within its walls." Kalen glanced at her, finding strength in the way she carried herself, unflinching, regal, luminous even in anxiety. "And you want me there? A human outsider?" "I want them to see you," she replied. "Not just as a man, but as proof. You saved my daughters. Twice. That matters." The transport descended toward a massive dome of living coral that glowed faintly, alive and ancient. As they entered, Kalen's breath caught. The chamber was a perfect hemisphere, platforms arranged in a ring, each bearing an ornate chair. Luminaries in silken robes already filled most of them, their eyes sharp as blades. Whispers rippled the moment Serena entered, with Kalen a step behind. "You've overstepped," snarled luminary Zereth Kor, a tall Vidian with indigo skin darkening nearly black with anger. "Bringing an outsider here without approval, shameful." "My family was attacked, Zereth," Serena replied coolly, ascending to her platform. "Protocol becomes secondary when children are targeted." Kalen felt eyes burning into him from all directions. He forced himself to stand tall. "Outrageous," Zereth spat. "Perhaps the human was complicit, staging the attack to earn your sympathy." Before Kalen could react, another voice cut through. "The recordings prove otherwise," said luminary Selira Thane, a woman with lavender skin. "He defended the children at risk to himself. That is fact." The chamber murmured again. High luminary Melis Vare arrived last, his presence silencing even Zereth. His eyes, sharp but curious, lingered on Kalen. "Perhaps we should hear from him directly." All gazes turned. Kalen swallowed hard, then spoke. The attackers knew exactly who they were looking for. They asked for the Kairos children by name. This wasn't random violence. And why should we believe a species known for deception? Zirith sneered. Kalen's jaw tightened, but he kept his voice level. Because I have no agenda here. Until 2 days ago, I was just a waiter cleaning spills. I don't gain anything from this, except knowing I did the right thing. The simplicity of his words seemed to land heavier than any elaborate speech. A ripple of approval moved through the chamber. Even Melis inclined his head, intrigued. A simple act of kindness has brought you into our greatest debate, the High Luminary mused. Fascinating how the universe works. The session raged for hours, accusations flying, alliances surfacing. Zirith pressed relentlessly, but Serenia stood her ground with calm authority. Though Kalen remained silent after his testimony, he felt the weight of history in every moment. No human had stood here before. And yet here he was, because he'd offered food to hungry children. When Serenia's hand slipped into his beneath the platform, hidden from sight, Kalen understood more clearly than ever, his life was no longer his own. The journey back to Astral Heights was quiet, tense. Serenia sat with her daughters clustered close, though her hand rested firmly on Kalen's knee. You were magnificent, she whispered. Few beings could speak so directly to the council. Kalen managed a faint smile. I just told the truth. The transport's comms chimed suddenly. Mistress Kairos, came the pilot's voice. Security breach reported at Astral Heights. Serenia stiffened. Details. Perimeter alarms triggered. Nothing found. Your daughters remained secure. Her eyes flicked to Kalen, and he caught the shadow of fear before she masked it. He took her hand. We'll handle this. When they landed, Commander Corin Vale met them at the gates, his soldiers bearing radiating authority. The children are safe. But there's more. Surveillance showed a distortion near the eastern wall, possible cloaking device. Kalen studied the footage with the security team, his instincts prickling. Show me the interior feeds from the same time. The screens flickered. Kalen's eyes narrowed on a figure moving down a corridor. There. That servant. The object he's carrying, it shifts shape between frames. That's not standard. Serenia's eyes hardened. And I don't recognize him. Together they raced to the children's quarters. Guards flanked the door, but inside, Kalen felt his stomach drop. The tutor, Marin, Serenia had called him, stood too stiffly in the corner, his gaze fixed on the girls instead of their mother. Who is that? Kalen whispered. Marin, Serenia answered, but her voice faltered. Though. The man moved too quickly, producing a hidden weapon, lunging for little Sora. Kalen didn't think, he moved. He hurled himself across the room, tackling the imposter away from the child. They crashed through a display, shards scattering like crystal rain. The man fought with trained precision, his blows landing heavy. Pain seared Kalen's freshly healed shoulder, but he fought back with everything he had, ducking, feinting, driving a knee into the man's gut, then slamming a strike against his neck. The imposter collapsed as guards burst in, weapons raised. They bound him quickly, dragging him away. Sora clung to Kalen's arm, her wide blue eyes glistening. You saved me, she whispered. Like the heroes in our stories. Emotion constricted Kalen's chest. Anyone would have. No, Serenia said firmly, drawing close. Not anyone. That's what makes you extraordinary. Her fingers brushed his cheek, trembling only slightly. Commander Vale returned, grim. The infiltrator carried a genetic sampler. We believe he intended to test the children's DNA. If proven hybrids, their existence would shatter the purists' cause. Serenia's face tightened, fury and fear mingling. Then Zirith Kor is behind this. He would stoop so low. Vale cautioned, without proof, naming him could destroy you. Serena's calculating mind was already moving, her gaze steady even in crisis. Then we will find proof. And we will not face this alone. Her hand slipped into Kalen's again, fingers intertwining. He realized with startling clarity that whatever storm was coming, he was already bound to it, to her children, to their fate. For the first time in his life, Kalen Dre was no longer just surviving. He was fighting for something greater. And he knew he would not let go. And that, my friends, is how the story of Kalen Dre, once just a weary waiter, exploded into a galactic struggle of politics, loyalty, and impossible love. What began as one small act of kindness in a tavern spiraled into council debates, assassination attempts, and a battle for the very future of two species. The questions linger long after the final scene: what price will Serena pay for defying the purists? How will Kalen, a human outsider, survive in a world where even allies fear what he represents? And perhaps most haunting, what will become of the three daughters, Elira, Naira, and Sora, whose very existence might alter the destiny of Vidia Prime forever? The tale reminds us that sometimes the universe pivots not on grand armies or mighty empires, but on quiet, uncalculated choices, like feeding hungry children when no one else will. Compassion, the smallest of sparks, can ignite revolutions. If you've enjoyed journeying through this story, if you felt your pulse quicken in the council chamber, or your breath catch when the imposter struck, then I invite you to carry it further. Subscribe to this channel for more deep dives into sci-fi storytelling, hit the like button if kindness and courage matter to you, and share this video with anyone who loves tales of humans and aliens colliding in all the messy, beautiful ways. Because somewhere out there, among the stars, someone else might be waiting for a story like this to remind them that even the smallest lives can change the fate of entire worlds.